Welcome back to the Summoning Circle, where you get to know the team working their magic on Forgotten Runiverse. I'm your host, Helen, and today I have summoned a 2D artist and animator who has been a hit on the Bisonic team. Lais is best known for creating the Calamity Moths and Lunar Grubs that players have loved so much. Let's welcome her to the Summoning Circle. Hey,
Hello,
Lais, how are you
Ellen.
doing?
I'm good. Thanks for asking, and thank you so much for inviting me. I've been watching the Summoning Circle for a while, ever since the first episode, and it's great to listen to why you work. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's a
I'm
pleasure.
excited
You're
to talk.
the 10th episode, lucky number 10. I feel like this is good numerology or something. We have to start our discussion by talking about Calamity Moths because players love them. They think they're adorable. We shared your concept art recently and we asked players if they felt better or worse about fighting these moths after seeing it. And lots of players were happy to fight dark magic that was corrupting the moths, but they were also feeling much worse after seeing the art because they are so cute. How does it feel to see your designs take on a life of their own in the game and resonate so deeply with the community?
It's super fun seeing people respond to it. It's very rewarding, and thank you so much for liking it and for the kind words about it. Uh, Whenever I see someone in game and they're wearing an equipment I've animated or like a mount I've designed, I always want to stop them and be like, "Hey, I made this. Do you like it?" I don't know. It's very exciting for me. I think when you work in a project for as long as I have, you can really get attached to the world you've helped build and to the people that helped you construct it. When I see like the Calamity Moth, the one in the fan art, it's so cute, that fan art, by the way. When I look at it, all I can think about is like Juanma, who's our crazy genius game designer, and how his like personality really shines through all his ideas. And then Roman, who's the art director, and he made the original sprite, and like all his years of experience and his preferences. And to me, it's like very beautiful to have that connection, to the assets in game. And I think players don't really think about that necessarily. Like when you're in a dungeon and you're just walking around and killing monsters and trying not to die to the same bear for the fifth time, like I do. You don't think about this, but like every pixel we have in a game is a part of the souls that people who worked on it. So whenever we get like any positive feedback, it's so special to me personally. It feels very nice.
That's really nice to hear. And I agree that fan art piece is so cute. We all loved it when we saw it. So, to give our players, our viewers, some more context, our art director Roman created the original Calamity Mother design, and that's the big toothy moth that we saw in your concept. Then you took this and expanded on it to design a whole moth family with the Calamity Moths and the Lunar Grubs. Can you walk us through that process of translating this concept or a different artist's concept into something more?
I think making variations of something that already exists is like my favorite part of working, in my opinion, because it's very immersive. You get this asset and you're looking at it and you're thinking, like, what would this absolute monstrosity look like if it was like a baby or like a worm? So it's very creatively enticing, I'd say. Sometimes when I'm doing like personal work, I would like go to Photoshop and I'll open a new canvas, and the white stare is just going to stare at me menacingly for hours because there's too much you could do. You could draw anything, so you don't get anything to work off. It's sometimes like that possibility is kind of like paralyzing. So it's very nice to have something to work, like to have something to confine yourself into. They say, I don't know who says it, but they say it, that limitation is like a juice for creativity, and I believe that it's very much my experience.
That's really interesting. So you see the constraints as an opportunity. Like it's not a constraint, it's inspiring.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Is something to entice you to fantasize about stuff, you know? It's not only this one creature, you have to think of everything else that surrounds that creature. So, where does it live? What does it eat? And was it ever a baby? You know, maybe it's the mother to those minions. You know, there's a lot of things you can think about and go deeper and deeper and deeper. And then after like thinking that, you have to translate it visually. You know, they have to match something very very cool as well that I was thinking about making smaller versions of bosses. You don't get that many pixels, right? Like those, they get smaller and smaller. They have to be like more concise. They have to have very good shape appeal so that they read, right? So I feel like the smaller we get the enemies, probably the cuter they'll look, because I'll often like make the head bigger because we're always looking at heads and faces to identify with characters. So a lot of things go into that process, but I think it's super fun. It's like the greatest part.
So you mentioned Roman, and when we had Roman on in the last episode of the Summoning Circle, he talked about how rewarding it is to be mentoring a new generation of artists and animators. I recall that during one of our company meetings where we were celebrating our launch, you mentioned how much Roman has taught you and how rewarding it's been for you too. So I'm hoping for any aspiring artists who are watching now, you might be willing to share some of that wisdom with everybody. Can you maybe give us a piece of advice Roman is giving you, something that maybe helped you out of a creative challenge or shifted your perspective?
For sure. He has really taught me so much. I remember like when I first started, I used to take the prompts very much at face value. Like they would tell me, "Oh, it's an owl enemy," and I'd be like, "Sure," and I'd draw an owl, job done. And I had a meeting with Roman, and he told me, you know, I don't think players want to be beating random animals, and it's so true. You feel kind of bad for them. So we try to find ways to make them more like creature-esque, and Roman really leads by example in that front, where when you look at his designs, they're not just what they are. The Calamity Mother is not a giant moth. It's this whole creature that you've never seen before. So he's really great at that. Something that Roman is really good at is giving constructive feedback. He always explains like the fundamentals behind what he's asking us to correct, and that made me more mindful when I'm drawing. Instead of just getting it done, I'll stop myself like midway and think, okay, why am I making the decisions that I'm making in this art piece, and can I justify myself if someone asks about him? If someone goes like, "Hey, this value here is not working," can I justify why I chose to do it that way? You know, and that really helps you get a great output. Just being mindful throughout the way, and I think that's a very good habit for beginners to adopt.
I think that's good for anyone to adopt. That's just good advice in general, right? Like, how would I justify it? I want to be mindful about my decision. I'll be carrying that into what I do too. That's such good advice. So you're primarily a pixel art animator here on the Bisonic team, but your portfolio includes so many different types of beautiful art pieces. What first drew you to this field? And was there ever a moment when you realized, I just need to do art for a living?
Yeah, yeah, and I remember it vividly. But like me wanting to be an artist, it really came from being a fan of those types of medias, like right, of being a fan of video games and a fan of animation. I was a big fan of like all sorts of cartoons. And not only did I want to draw, I really wanted to be in this area. And I remember the first time I realized, it suddenly clicked to me. that someone was behind all the media that I was consuming. It didn't just magically appear on the screen. And I just thought, that's crazy. Like, people have that job. Is that something, you can spend your whole life working on? I wanted to do that. So that was this moment to me where I was like, yep, I know what I'm doing. This is it.
That's true. Yeah, someone has to create the art that we're all enjoying so much. Why not you, right?
Hmm.
Well, I'm glad you made that decision. Your art has such a cool, rich fantasy flavor, I'm noticing. What inspires those fantasy elements? Are there any books, games, movies, or TV shows that inspire your creative world?
I could sit here and I could like share my screen and show you everything on my art station and my Pinterest that inspires me. But I think I'd like to talk about why I like the fantasy element. I think looking back, it's because like one of my favorite books growing up was called The Secret Fairy Party Book. And it was a 99% illustration book. And when there was text, it was saying like about the life of these fairies and what they would bring to the party, what their jobs were and what they were good at. And I remember one of them had like a pet squirrel, and I thought that was so cute, right? And I have this memory of staring at a singular page for hours because I could really imagine and I really like to think about how they were doing the things they were doing. Like, they were making a cake, and I would, imagine someone bringing in the flour and the fun they were having. Imagining this whole scenario. And I think that set up a precedent for me to then fall in love with every other piece of fantasy media that I ever encountered. So it went from that one children's book to like Mario Galaxy, and then I don't know, Monster High, and then Game of Thrones, and nowadays I'm obsessed with Legends of Zelda. So and then I became addicted to League of Legends, and I'm still in love with like the universe they've built. And I think taste is just like an amalgamation of everything you've ever encountered that resonated with you. So that's where I get it from. Also, as an artist, like when I think of my inspirations, I think of artists like TCK, Thomas Chamberlain King. He's very good. He has like very charming, great shape appeal in his work that I would like to imitate. I love Zinchin and Gabriel Azevedo, who's a Brazilian artist. Shout out. If you've played League of Legends, you've probably seen some of their work, but if you haven't, I recommend checking them out.
Well, you have really great taste. So thank you for bringing it to our team here. I'm glad you had such a rich amalgamation of inspiring art in your life. Actually, you brought some more art with you today. Do you want to talk a bit about the process here?
Oh, I got like the greatest opportunity to make some battlers for the game, which are the scenes that you enter to fight the enemies. And that's not something I usually do. I'm usually doing, enemies, mounts, equipment. So it was very challenging, but it was, I think, the most fun I had working for the Runiverse. And I got to make like the whole painting in Photoshop, you know, very painterly style, and then translate it to pixel art, which was also super challenging, but also super fun. I'm very excited for people to join that battler and play with it. I'm always watching streams, so I love when I see something that I've made on screen. I'm like, yay, it's very exciting. So I hope people like those battlers.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Yeah, there's so many talented artists on the team. You're certainly one of them. It's cool to see you contributing to so many different areas of the game art. And I think it also speaks to how collaborative the team is generally. And this ongoing mentorship I find really inspiring within Bisonic in particular. So thank you so much for bringing your fantasy flair to Forgotten Universe. I know that we all really appreciate it, and the players do too. Before we close, do you have any final words for the players out there who've been enchanted by your creations so far?
Yeah, I'd like to thank them so much for supporting the game. I'm always checking out the fan art and the lore that they're putting on Discord, and it's very joyful for me to build this world together with them. It's a very tight knit community. It's very cute to see, and I'd like to shout out all the Brazilian players. There are so many of them. Salve galera, como vocês estão? I watch all of their streams. The biggest tweet shatter in everyone who's streaming Runiverse right now. So thanks for playing Runiverse.
Awesome. Well, I'll see you in the Runiverse, Lais. Until next
I'll
time,
see
let's
you.
sign off.
No, I blacked out. I was so nervous.
Oh, you were great.